They laughed at the alien woman's love for a human until he fought for her. The starship Horizon drifted through the void between galaxies carrying diplomats from 20 different worlds, and among them was Zara, a woman from the planet Zelthar, with skin that shimmered like silver water and eyes that held the depth of nebulas, and she had come to the human colony station hoping to learn about the strange species that had recently joined the galactic community. But what she found there changed. Everything she knew about the universe. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was a mechanic on the station, and he spent his days fixing broken systems and keeping the old place running. And he was nothing special by human standards, just a guy with grease under his nails and a quick smile. But when Zara first saw him working in the engine bay, something sparked inside her chest, and it was not just curiosity. It was something deeper, something her people had no word for. The other aliens on the station noticed immediately, and they whispered behind her back in languages she pretended not to understand. And Commander Throck, a massive warrior from the Kandor Empire, laughed openly when he saw her watching Jake work, and he told her that humans were weak, short-lived creatures barely worth noticing, and he said that her interest in one was embarrassing to her entire world. But Zara did not care what they thought, because when Jake smiled at her, the whole station seemed brighter. Jake noticed her too at first, because she was beautiful in a way that made his heart ache, but then because she was kind and curious, and she asked him questions about his work, and listened like his answers mattered. And no one had ever done that before, and soon they were spending every free moment together, and she would sit on a crate in the engine bay while he worked, and they would talk about everything and nothing. And he taught her human jokes, and she taught him words in her language that sounded like music. The other humans on the station did not understand either, and Lieutenant Amy Foster told Jake he was being stupid, and that aliens like Zara only saw humans as primitive curiosities, and she said that Zara would get bored and leave, and Jake would be left, looking like a fool. But Jake did not listen, because when he was with Zara, he felt like he could be more than just a mechanic, fixing pipes in the dark. Then the Kandor delegation issued a challenge, and it was their way of settling disputes through combat, and Commander Throck announced that he wanted to claim Zara as his mate, because she came from a powerful family, and a union would strengthen his political position. And he said that no human could possibly compete with a Kandor warrior, and the whole station gathered in the central arena to watch, and everyone expected Zara to accept Throck because that was the logical choice, the smart choice. But Zara stood in front of the crowd with her head held high, and she said she did not want Throck, and she wanted Jake, and the arena exploded with laughter, and aliens from a dozen worlds mocked her choice, and they said humans were too weak, too fragile, too short-lived, and Throck stepped forward with a cruel smile and said that if this human wanted her, he would have to fight for her. And that was the Kandor way. And Jake felt every eye in the station turn to him. Jake was not a fighter, and he was a mechanic, and he had never been in a real battle, and Throck stood nearly 8 feet, tall with muscles like stone and skin that could deflect blades, and everyone knew how this would end. And Amy grabbed Jake's arm and told him not to be stupid, and she said he would die, and Zara would watch him die, and he should just walk away. But Jake looked at Zara standing alone in the center of the arena, and he saw the way she looked at him with hope and fear mixed together, and he knew he could not walk away. The rules were simple, and the fight would last until one fighter could not continue, and no weapons were allowed, just strength and skill and will. And Throck removed his armor and flexed his massive arms, and the crowd roared with anticipation, and Jake stepped into the arena wearing only his work clothes and boots, and the laughter grew louder, and someone shouted that this would not even be entertaining because it would be over too fast. The fight began, and Throck charged like a freight train, and Jake barely dodged, and the warrior's fist crashed into the wall where Jake's head had been, and metal crumpled like paper, and Jake realized he could not trade blows with this creature, and he had to be smarter, faster, and he ducked and weaved and used the arena itself as a weapon, and he led Throck on a chase around pillars and equipment, and every time the warrior swung, Jake was somewhere else. But Jake could not run forever, and Throck caught him with a backhand that sent him flying, and Jake hit the ground hard and tasted blood, and his ribs screamed, and the crowd jeered and told him to stay down. And Throck walked toward him slowly, savoring the moment, and he said that humans did not deserve to stand beside real warriors. And Jake pushed himself up on shaking arms, and he thought about Zara and how she had chosen him, and he stood. The fight went on, and Jake took hit after hit, and his face swelled and his body ached and blood dripped from cuts he did not remember getting. But every time he fell, he got back up and the crowd grew quieter, and they stopped laughing and they watched this human refuse to quit. And Throck grew frustrated, and he had expected this to be easy, and he had expected the human to break. But Jake kept standing, kept moving, kept fighting. Then Jake saw his opening, and Throck was tired too, and his movements were slower and sloppier, and when the warrior lunged, Jake stepped inside his guard, and he grabbed a broken pipe from the floor, and he swung it with everything he had left, and the pipe connected with Throck's knee in the joint that even Kandor armor had to leave flexible, and Throck howled and stumbled, and Jake hit him again and again, and he fought like a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Throck fell, and the arena went silent, and the mighty Kandor warrior lay on the ground clutching his shattered knee, and Jake stood over him bleeding and broken but standing. And he looked up at the crowd, and he said in a voice that carried through the entire station that humans might be weak and they might be short-lived, but they knew how to fight for what they loved. Zara ran to him, and she caught him as his legs gave out, and she held him while the station medics rushed forward, and the crowd did not laugh anymore, and they watched as this alien woman cradled her human and whispered words of love in a language that sounded like starlight, and Commander Throck was carried away in disgrace, and the challenge was over, and Jake had won. The days after were hard, and Jake spent a week in the medical bay, and his body slowly healed, and Zara never left his side, and she held his hand and told him stories about her world, and she said that on Zelthar they had a word for someone who would give everything for another, and that word meant more than love, it meant chosen, and she said Jake was her chosen and always would be. The other aliens on the station treated them differently after that, and they nodded when they passed, and some even apologized, and Commander Throck's own delegation sent a message saying the human had earned their respect through honorable combat, and Amy came to visit, and she did not say she was sorry, but she brought Jake his favorite meal from the station cafeteria, and she told Zara to take care of him, and that was enough. When Jake finally left the medical bay, Zara took him to the observation deck where they had spent so many nights talking, and she showed him a star in the distance, and she said that was Zelthar. And she said her people wanted to meet him, and they wanted to honor the human who had fought for one of their own, and Jake laughed and said he was just a mechanic, and Zara kissed him and said he was so much more. They stood together looking out at the stars, and Jake realized that the universe was bigger and stranger than he had ever imagined, and love could cross the void between worlds, and it did not matter what anyone else thought, because they had each other, and that was enough. And somewhere in the distance the horizon prepared to jump to the next system, and Jake and Zara would be on it together heading toward whatever came next, and they were not afraid because they had already won the fight that mattered most.